today.
Okay, so the good news is what we've got for you this afternoon is a very practical session. Okay, so you might have heard a lot of theory, you might have seen maybe some programming that was really technical earlier on today. What we're looking to do is just a very practical session. So if you want to jump slides, Chris is going to drive the slides. There we go. So who we are, if you've not met us before, my name's Rob Pratt and I've worked at Combined Knowledge now for about 5 years. So I've seen a few of these conferences, all very good. What I tend to spend my time doing is visiting customers and helping them get the most out of their SharePoint environments. So over the past few years, we've seen all these different versions of SharePoint coming up. And what I spend my time doing is actually helping people be site owners, members of sites, and visitors of a site. So when myself and Chris were putting this session together, we were thinking about what could we do to make this interesting, how could we look at it? And what we thought was, rather than picking on a specific topic like document sets or content types, we wanted to take something really eclectic, kind of a big old topic, a really good challenge. And what we thought was, there's no better challenge than how can I be a perfect site owner? Not a good site owner or just a general average getting started site owner, but how could we be a perfect site owner? So we thought that sounds like a pretty good challenge. Chris, do you just want to introduce yourselves before we get too far in?
My name's Chris Casingena. Again, I'm a SharePoint trainer from Combined Knowledge. Haven't been there as long as Rob. I think I'll be there with Combined Knowledge 2 years in June, so I'm coming up to my 2nd year anniversary. And again, I train Microsoft SharePoint, and I also train Nintex as well. And I also sort of don't spend time in mud like Rob does, although he's trying to encourage me to do so.
I think it's a healthy thing. Kind of good for your skin and that. Okay, so back to why we put this session together. So we're thinking about how could we be this perfect site owner, which again was a big challenge, and we thought maybe we'd look online. Is the answer online? So we went to our favourite search engine, which of course is Bing, and we just did a straightforward search. How can I be the perfect site owner? And what was great was we got like 39 million results.
I didn't believe that. I asked him to do it again, and he was right, so I let him keep that slide.
Okay, so I've got all these results, and I started to read them. I think, God, the answer's there already. We don't really need to do the session anymore. So it was looking like a bad start. But what I found was, as I started to read through them, as you can even see, and I've not doctored this at all, some of them were from 2003, so they were possibly going to be relevant. It was still SharePoint, of course, but we think things might have changed a bit since then. A lot of it was from TechNet. How do we feel about TechNet? Microsoft TechNet. It's kind of good for maybe admins and devs. Kind of hopefully those guys understand it. But if I'm a pure end user and I'm getting into being a site owner, so things like content types, document libraries, versioning, all the really practical stuff that we care about and that's really important to our end users having a good experience. This TechNet stuff often is just not cutting it. Like, I think they're scared of pictures on TechNet. You just never get a picture of something. It says to do it, click here, here, and here, and there will not be a picture of what it should look like at the end. So kind of, I don't know why. We need to try and work that out one day, but that's beyond the scope of this session probably. So that's kind of what we thought, that was the challenge that we decided to take up. We wanted to put some boundaries on what a site owner should be doing. So we don't think that a site owner should be doing all the work and doing all the sites. So we wanted to start off just by putting some of this scope to what a site owner should do. So we thought about some of the most important things first. So security was one of the key things. So in this session, we are going to do a few demos, and one of them will involve securing a site. Okay, so we definitely think that a really perfect site owner, a good site owner, should know about security within SharePoint. Having said that, what we're going to see is there's ways of approaching security within SharePoint so that I can do the security, which is kind of a fiddly thing to deal with. I need to be wide awake. I want to say sober? No, wide awake.
Sober helps.
Yeah, want to be wide awake. And basically, I need to know how to do that. And I want to be able to do it once and then not have to deal with it every day. So that as a site owner, there will be things that we need to do that are fiddly, but as long as we're not doing them like every minute of every day, as a site owner, generally it's acceptable. Have we found that? So content types is a classic example. Sometimes maybe workflows as well. Even forms can be kind of fiddly to get them right. But again, as long as I can do it once and then my end users get a really good, simple experience, it's acceptable.
Payoffs are worth it, aren't they?
So we kind of get a raw deal as site owners, but it's okay because we know that the end result is going to be there. So again, I might spend 10 minutes making something and my end users might save 10 minutes every day. Yeah, so we know that's the perfect site owner. Yeah, so they're givers, right? We're good site owners. We are all site owners, right? Yeah, no one's going to put their hands up. That never works. Okay, what else we got? Seen it like in different things, and everyone goes, yeah, me. Maybe that's just in America. Okay, the next thing, another core responsibility that we'll demo out today is structure. This is probably the one that's going to take you the most time. Yeah? So this idea of creating sites and subsites, creating the libraries, switching versioning on, creating the columns. So this is part of what we'll build out. One of the ways that we're going to demonstrate this today is I'm going to do a bit of role play. Don't worry, it doesn't involve all of you, it's between myself and Chris. So the role play is I'm going to put the hat on of a general user that has a problem. So I'm going to have a few problems today, and then Chris is going to solve them by kind of being a perfect site owner. Sound exciting?
Yeah, hopefully.
If you used up all your energy already today, it's day one. There's been no drinking at all.
It's a good day to have a session.
It is a good day.
Yeah.
It is a good day. Yeah, I've had 5 already. Okay, so that explains it. That's okay, that's all right. We can relate to that, that's good. Okay, so the structure thing, we've got this build it and they will come and we'll kind of work into that in a moment. It's not just some pun, might be. Next thing, as a site owner, perhaps something less obvious, we think you should be a guru. So we think if kind of your site members have read 1 book, you should have read 2 books. Yeah? Not just 1.5 books, you need to be way ahead of these guys. So again, that definitive idea that as a site owner, you need to know a lot more than the members of the site. So if you're going to be creating things like templates and content types, all you're going to ask them to do is go click new expense claim. You need to know kind of about galleries and inheritance and all these big things that are going on. So again, that's normal. That's part of your responsibility as a site owner. That's not an IT thing, that's not a dev thing. We think if you're a really good site owner, the perfect site owner, you'll know how to do that inside out and back to front.
Okay. These guys are on the right track anyway. They're at a SharePoint conference, so that does work.
It's a good start.
Yeah, it is a good start.
And then this one, this is a bit debatable, but maybe the wording's a bit off, but the idea of being a cheerleader. So actually, if you're going to be a good site owner and you're going to secure the site and create the structure and you're going to be designing everything, one of the things you're in a perfect position to do is actually encourage people into the site. Okay, so there is specific sessions about this later on in the week. I've got a session tomorrow where we talk about adoption in a global company. We've got a company that I've been working with 10,000 employees. So we've got a bigger scale. For today, we're thinking about it on a small scale. I've got 1 site, which maybe is for my department, maybe my sales department, and we'll be looking at maybe a few ways that we can kind of drive adoption of that site as a site owner. So there's obviously a company-wide thing going on, but as an individual, I've got a good opportunity to influence that as well.
See, I genuinely want to go to that session, but I can't because I'm busy. I'm not even being nice to Rob by saying I genuinely want to go to it. I do actually want to go to that session, so I'll get to see it on the DVD, I guess.
Okay, so that sets some of the boundaries, okay, and some of the things we'll be demoing out and we'll be building through. We wanted to kind of limit it the other way a little bit, and we're not going to spend so long on this because this is stuff that we don't really care about. So hopefully you've not got a SharePoint server under your desk. No one's doing that, right? No? So the IT department have the servers in the server room, and it's all air conditioned, great, and you've got loads of servers, not just 1, right? Microsoft says you should have 2 at least. Just if you've got 1 person, you need 2 servers. Okay, so backup and restore, that's not for a site owner to worry about. That's hopefully going to be maintained. We can worry about it and we could check with our IT department, hey guys, what's the strategy? You know, if I've deleted something, what happens if the system switches off overnight? What happens? So you could ask those questions. They're good questions to ask, so you can be reassured and you can reassure the members of your team. Generally, when we're talking to customers we work with, their SharePoint environment is more backed up than things like their network drives because of things like the SQL Server. The backup can be kind of per second rather than every hour or every day. So generally, if we're kind of up to speed with that stuff, it's a good story. But again, we just get reassured. If there's genuine technical problems, so if someone does something and they get an error and a correlation ID and they've read the message and it makes no sense at all, there's just like not a single word in there, it's all just gibberish, that's not a site owner problem.
Well, SharePoint's getting more pleasant in delivering its error messages. It doesn't come up with like error and scare people. It actually says, oh, I'm sorry, there was an error. There's not much I can do about it. But at least, you know, these errors aren't really the end user's things to tackle. It's normally the role of the IT department to resolve problems like that.
Okay, so some of that stuff might come through you. You might be the first line support almost for the site, but then hopefully you know where to escalate that to.
Like sweep it under the carpet, don't you?
Yeah, hopefully. Try it again later. It might work times. But again, we think that that's not something we're going to worry about too much today. And then finally, just because you're creating the site obviously doesn't mean you should be creating all the content as well. So if you've made yourselves into really important webmasters by taking SharePoint and not letting anyone in, hopefully that's not a good idea. Hopefully you're not doing that. So you kind of, a lot of companies actually still use SharePoint the way they would have done old-fashioned websites. So they will have locked it down. If you want to upload a document, you'll have to post it to me, and then I'll review it, and then I'll upload it. So again, it's nice to kind of keep yourselves busy and be important. Kind of, oh, can you do this for me, please, Rob? Please upload this document today. but the novelty of that wears off pretty thin when you're trying to book a holiday or something, and they say, no, you're invaluable. So the whole idea of SharePoint is to get away from this. The content hopefully is going to be driven by the people in the department, the project. Okay, so some of the limits that we're keeping track of. Okay, so next comes a bit where we're going to try and make it a bit more realistic. So all these ideas that we've talked about, we're going to do a few different demonstrations. For these demonstrations, I'm going to be an end user, so I'm going to have some problems that end users have. And then Chris actually is going to be the perfect site owner, and he's going to be very attentive. He's going to listen to my problems and solve them. So he's going to use all sorts of stuff. So he's going to create new sites. He's going to use security through groups. I don't want to give everything away, but lots of stuff. Yeah. He's going to be quite busy today, whilst I just complain.
Okay. We'll go back to that slide just before we pick up again, just to remind ourselves of the roles. What we're going to do is cover basically a pre-site checklist. We're going to talk about site creation and ongoing tasks. Originally, we tried to break this down into planning a site, creating a site, setting up the security, and then we realised, well, Rob had a better approach. Actually, just planning the site, then creating it, then your ongoing tasks, the more simplified way of managing sites. So we kind of re-strategized our method of creating.
There, we've re-strategized. That's a new one.
No, I coined the phrase. So what we thought about was creating something like a pre-site checklist. Okay, we started to animate this with the red ticks, and then we thought, nah, we'll leave it at that. It looks funky. So the idea of this is a word that we're trying to sort of build into this session is discovery, trying to identify what is required of your business before you go out into the SharePoint world blue yonder and start creating content. Now, a lot of people will already have their SharePoint environment set up, but even for ongoing maintenance, we're going to talk about that, and for new site creation, there are a few useful things that you can go through. For example, existing data and forms. Is there anything that you need to migrate into a SharePoint site? For example, do you have a lot of documents that you have to take off a shared drive? Do you have many forms? What kind of methods do you need to implement to get this content in the same format that it was in a file share as it is in a document library, for example? A lot of people think, well, I can import an entire folder structure into SharePoint, but should you be using folders when you can use metadatas, which are a lot more configurable than folders? Also security. So what kind of security is required for our sites before we start creating them? So you might want to talk to the people who are going to be using the sites, the people who know better than anyone who should be accessing content. If you said to finance, hi finance, who should be accessing your confidential documents? They say, us, finance. And they say, okay, that's fairly clear. But they might have a more bespoke security model for that. Look at established business processes. One thing Rob likes to say is that SharePoint's normally implemented to get around problems. So by finding established business processes, there might be parts of that don't work, which SharePoint can resolve, such as versioning, for example. So we could look at established processes and see if we can build them into SharePoint. There's a lot of workflow engines out there, both third-party and native to SharePoint, but can actually automate people's business processes and save them time. So as a good site owner, or a perfect site owner more or less, we would want to know as much about those as possible so that we can implement those processes.
Can I jump in?
You can jump in.
He's not breathed for ages, has he? So I think that probably, that point there of looking at these existing business processes might be the most important of all these. So SharePoint site owners, if you just create a site and then start to think about what should I do with it, often that doesn't work very well, because you've already got these people that have been working in their role for years and years, and they already have processes, and they've already got Outlook or network drives and all these other things. So that's one of the things I think, if you can sort of choose to be a site owner, you can sort of think, right, what am I going to create as my first good site, my first perfect site, identifying a real problem that people have. So whether that's duplication of effort, where we're finding things are not being checked out, and I can work on something at the same time as someone else, whether it's about our network being clogged up with too many emails and email attachments. So there's all these problems that not just most companies, most departments have. So a site owner hopefully will, a perfect site owner would home in on these things. So they would realise, right, there's something going on here which I can improve on. Okay, so that's really important.
Yeah. I think also, just to harp in on my next point, In regards to talking to your end users, when we're talking about discovery, discovery comes from talking to your end users. Going in with some sort of blind objective is not really going to get your end users using SharePoint. So finding out what their needs are from the system is incredibly important. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd say that hooks in actually to the test site as well. So if you're having trouble talking to your end users because they don't really know what problems they have, if you can mock up a test site and you can say, look, here's some things that are going on. And when we say a test site, we're not thinking big. We're not thinking a server or a series of. Literally, I've got a site collection already, and I'm just going to make a little site down here. I'm going to put in a few views and a few columns, and it's just going to be a little test area. And it might not even look very pretty. You know, a lot of people get hung up on making a site look pretty. As you're going to discover today, we're not about that. So we're more about the practical side of things.
Yeah.
So and the functionality is to save people time and make their life a bit easier.
Learn as much about SharePoint as possible. Obviously, this comes back to you're attending a conference. That's a fantastic start. The perfect site owner will hopefully know as much about the basics of SharePoint as possible, and maybe you'll attend training courses, maybe you'll research online various methods there are to skill up on SharePoint. But the more you know about the product, the bigger your toolkit is to fix various scenarios that the business is presenting for you.
Yeah, there's two specific documents that are mentioned there. There's one that we've just put down as limitations. Has anyone heard of this boundaries and limitations document from Microsoft?
It's Rob's new favourite document.
New favourite document. So, you know, sometimes you'll be doing something, you think, oh, how many files could I put here? Or how many columns could I have there? And you just think, I'll go on Bing and I'll find out. And then you find all these different answers depending on what version you're in and whether you've got standard or enterprise. So wouldn't it be nice if there was just a proper document that Microsoft had released quite a while ago called Boundaries and Limitations, and it just tells you all of it in there? There is. So I found that actually if you sort of search that phrase, boundaries and limitations, and then the right version of SharePoint, so they've got them for all these different versions, it's just out there, it's all spelled out.
George, I'll give them an example. Tell them about blogs.
Yeah, so
30,000, wasn't it?
So a general user that has a blog post, a blog site, you can actually put 30,000 posts in there. Yeah.
That's a mouthy blogger, that is.
Hopefully, again, those limits reassure you, but sometimes if they're about file sizes and stuff, it might actually tell you before you got started that something's not possible. Yeah, it tells you this is not a good idea, it's not supported, which is often what you want to know. So it's definitive as well. It's like Microsoft have told us that. And there's another one which is a bit more popular. Anyone heard of this fair, good, better, best? That one's been around for a while. So fair, good, better, best, that actually talks about using SharePoint with different versions of Microsoft Office. So this is a real headache for perfect site owners, but also for general sort of support teams. So if your company, how many companies are using Outlook? We all Outlook people, more or less. And how many people have got different versions of Outlook? Not so many because it's a headache, but there's still people. So again, when you're trying to find out, well, if someone's on the phone to me and they're saying they're trying to synchronize documents from their document library and down to Outlook and it's not working, one of the questions will be, what version of Outlook have you got? And then someone will say, well, should it work with 97? And I'll be like, I don't know. I wonder what Microsoft say. So we could look and it could say, no, this won't work, rather than me installing it and trying it. So there's just a few documents like that. There's what I like about those is they're from Microsoft, so they're definitive. You know what it says is going to be the end of that discussion. So again, the general blogs and stuff are good out there. There's all these different things going on, but yeah, fair, good, better, best, and the boundaries and limitations documents are definitely worth a look through. And you can just skim through those and kind of glean little gems of information. They're definitely worth a skim. Okay.
One other one. Rob's quite nicely tidied up the comments about the test site. It's useful to have a test site. I worked in a company where they didn't have a test site and put everything into live environment, which was fun when they sort of patched SharePoint and broke loads of custom web parts. That was a great time. They actually said to me, Chris, can you fix it? And I thought, well, this was created by a developer who doesn't work here anymore. And by the way, I'm not a developer. So that worked really well. So test sites, fantastic for implementation and testing. Do we need a site though? Again, another point is sometimes when people put these requests in and say, I'd like a new site to do X, Y, and Z, sometimes SharePoint actually doesn't warrant the effort behind the whole process. So sometimes you don't need a site. Sometimes the current business process just needs to be stuck with, because migrating absolutely everything to SharePoint sometimes isn't the right way forward. So we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail later.
That's good. So basically, having a site is not the answer to every problem. You don't always need more sites.
Okay, there's another checklist. We got really fond of this checklist. Don't worry, this is the last time it appears. So, it's the perfect site owner. I have my pre-site checklist. Now, when I've actually come to approach creating a site, there's a few things that I'd consider. Obviously, I'd create the site. Oops, off you go. I don't need SlideShare help. Securing the site. A few best practices for you. Perfect site owners will probably think, where can I actually save myself time? Well, using Active Directory groups can actually be added to either SharePoint security groups or directly into these site security. IT maintain those groups. Someone joins the company, IT add them to the correct security group. You don't have to do anything at the site level because it's maintained by IT. So by using Active Directory security groups, you can save yourselves time. You might also want to choose approvers in your site. Approvers you can use to delegate responsibilities out to so that other people can approve content within the site. Best practices as well. I have a few best practices which I've learned from using SharePoint 2007 and 2010. Minimum levels of access. Just because your mate at work has asked you to be a site owner doesn't mean you should give them site owner access, because they may actually create their own site, delete something in your site and restructure something horrifically, and it'll be your responsibility because you're the original site owner. Minimum access works. If someone only needs to upload documents and edit and delete documents, contribute level access is fine. They don't need anything more than is necessary.
Generally, for most of the things we've said so far, it applies to every version of SharePoint. So 2003 to 2013. Some of the things around security have changed a little bit going into 2013. What we've done to try and keep it simple for us so our brains don't explode, we're going to talk about 2013 at the end of the session. So everything we say at the moment is general and applies basically everywhere, and then we've got a few exceptions which we've got a slide for right at the end. Just be one slide. Generally it's good news that things are not changing too much. We quite like SharePoint 2010, or at least we did. So hopefully it's good news that it's not changing too much.
One other tip, secure from the top down as well. Through security, you might find it quite liberating that you can secure at a document level. Then you've come to secure 10 documents and then someone joins the company who needs to have access to those documents. You have to secure those documents again 10 times. If you place them all in a folder and secure from the top level down, you've saved yourselves 10 reoccurring instances where you have to recreate the security and you're just doing it once. So I always try and urge people, rather than managing at the document level and breaking inheritance for security, I'd say do it at the folder, library level where possible.
I think one of the things that's interesting with that is a lot of people get away with not doing that by buying third-party tools. How many people have bought a third-party tool for SharePoint? Not everyone, surely everyone. Because surely SharePoint on its own doesn't just work. There's all these holes. So security is a classic one. So if you have been kind of moseying along and without really thinking about it, you've secured individual documents and individual folders, what happens when someone then leaves the company? Well, we could just reset their password and log on as them. No, probably IT wouldn't let us do that. So one of the things that's quite difficult is to say, well, I want this user to have all the permissions that other user used to have. So again, that's where a lot of things like these third-party tools come in, or a developer in-house will build you something. So again, whenever you start to feel like, oh, it doesn't do this, we need a third-party tool, either you're going to have to kind of dig out the money and buy it, or you're going to have to think, well, maybe this is not the way we should be working. And hopefully you realise that before you're too far down the line.
Okay. Just a few other site creation premises. We've got creating site columns, saving yourself time rather than declaring the same columns in multiple lists and libraries. If you're going to reuse columns, declare them at the gallery level, which can be either at the site level or site collection level, where you've got the ability to declare a column once and use it multiple times in different locations. Again, saving you time. If you need to edit that column, it will replicate those changes down to the child sites. Content types, we're going to have spend a little bit of time on content types. We didn't find another session, did we, in regards to something that focused on content types?
We had a look through the agenda yesterday. We're trying to see if there was any session that was just purely about content types, but I couldn't really see one. So kind of made people feel it's a done thing, because there's already been loads of sessions on that previous years.
Don't worry, we'll talk about that.
We'd do that as well. We've got an hour. We've only taken on the whole of being a site owner. Let's do a bit of content types as well. So we'll go for that.
Again, content types can save you time, can keep consistency. We're going to show you a dedicated scenario for that. We're also taking lists from Excel and taking information from Excel and pulling it into a list in SharePoint. Again, another advantage of storing information that was in Excel. You lose certain things from Excel, like pivot tables, and you lose formulas and so forth. But taking that information, the columns and rows of information, placing them in SharePoint in a list, you get additional advantages like RSS feeds, alerts, individual item security. So you have to weigh the benefits and the consequences. But importing content from Excel, again, another benefit and something that we might do as a site owner.
He's breathed again. Okay, so that's twice he's breathed now. So within here, where we've got this data that's coming from Excel, I think it's a quick win. You know, if you've got people that say, no, we don't really need SharePoint, we've already got this Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, sometimes it goes corrupt, but generally it's fine. And yeah, well, when one person's editing it, we can't really have other people editing it because, again, sometimes we lose changes and we're not really sure who's changed it, but yeah, Excel's fine. We've had it for ages, so it's just the way we work. So yeah, just being able to take an existing spreadsheet and just bring it straight into SharePoint with like 2 minutes worth of effort or 1 minute of effort and just be able to say, but what do you think? Could you work like this? What do you think? Will it work? And hopefully they might go, yeah, actually, maybe it'll work. If you get the right type of view and the right permissions. So it's definitely like a quick win, isn't it? You know, we're trying to win. It's almost like a marketing thing. We're trying to win people over with our site. Please come and play in our site.
One of the clients that we've been working with, I mean, one of them cottoned on to the fact that you could export an Excel spreadsheet into a list, and that was quite a popular blog, and people loved that. So again, very simple functionality, but you know, a lot of benefits behind that. Quite a common thing that you'll be asked to do is to migrate content. I mentioned earlier that you might have a network drive and you might have to pull that content into a library. Again, our demonstration is going to focus around a scenario based on that. You might also have content that you want to promote in the navigation as well. So as a site owner, you should know how to customize the global navigation and current navigation. And also, you might want to log the creation process of your site as well. My memory is not great, and if someone asked me what I did yesterday, I'd think, well, I know it had something to do with the conference because we're setting it up, but I can't recall everything. So if someone said to me, you created a site last year, that's fantastic, but you used this feature and you set it up, and how did you do that? I'd think, I'm not too sure. Most IT professionals normally when they're setting up systems create instruction sets as they're going through. I don't think that is completely false when you're working as a site owner. If you're creating a series of steps that you took to create your site, that can add to benefits later for helping other people create similar things or reminding yourself how that was created.
How good are we at the minute? Does anyone actually make notes of like how they've achieved things in their sites? Yeah? And what format do you do that? Is that like a Word document or a... Yeah? Yeah, one of the things we've seen recently, I hadn't really thought about it before, is actually there's a company we're working with at the moment. They've got 10,000 users, and they're kind of about 6 months into their SharePoint environment, so they're quite new to it. And they've got this community that's just starting up of site owners. They've just had their training, and they're just kind of excited about it. And actually, there's about 4 or 5 of them that have started to blog. So within their SharePoint environment, they're blogging about how their site's getting better. You know, there was a good one about someone's making views and columns, and that had just sort of clicked, and that was the thing that their department liked. And that got loads of comments.
Really drives adoption.
So many
as well,
comments coming through from these blog posts of these other site owners. Oh, can you show us that? And we found internally now, just driven, that they're actually starting to do their own training. I don't think I like that. But these site owners are actually doing their own internal training, and that's proved really popular as well. Which again, I'm not really sure about. Good for them, I guess.
Yeah, you just remind them of something really complicated, like a content creator web part, then they come back. Okay.
Got to let them go at some point.
So we did say we'd come back to this slide because we haven't been really in our roles yet. So do you want to kick off, Rob?
Yeah. So I guess now comes the practical bit. So we've laid out all these things we should be doing, and Chris thinks he's up for the task. So I said, yeah, by all means, you can be the perfect site owner, and we'll all try and look at what you've done wrong, which will be good fun. So for me, I'm going to be 3 different scenarios fairly quickly, and I'm going to be an end user that doesn't really know much about SharePoint, but I have these different problems, and I'm hoping that Chris can help me out. Okay,
so rather than we were originally going to go through a process of like creating a site from start to finish, but I actually thought Rob's plan was very good in regards to Rob comes to me with problems, and I'll actually resolve them with implementing those solutions into SharePoint. So Rob, would you like to start off with your first session?
Okay, so the first one actually is combined knowledge. So we thought let's kind of look at ourselves. So we're really big SharePoint users, as well as kind of talking about it. We use it pretty much in the office. We have about every version of SharePoint. Some of it's still with stuff in the old versions, but we've got the 365 and we've got the older ones as well. So one of the things that we actually used SharePoint for in the office was planning the conference. So if you kind of think about how many documents it created, so as an end user, if I imagine I'm in this admin role, kind of be right in the middle of this process. So I'm kind of worried that loads of people are going to book onto this conference and that's going to make loads of paperwork for me. So that's my concern as an admin person. I don't really worry about anything else, but it sounds like a lot of paperwork. Obviously, I've already got a full-time job before the conference is being planned. And another complication with this particular one is that the account managers are going to receive these booking forms that the customers have sent in. Then they pass them to me, which they normally forward via email. Then I need to forward them on to the finance department so they can do their paperwork and check the payments. Then they reply back to me to say that I can send my paperwork out. So we get kind of like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 hops on the email. Every one of those emails has the attached booking form that came in originally. So IT, obviously, like our Exchange email person is going nuts because we've got all these copies of these booking forms and he knows there's just going to be more and more coming every week. So he's pretty worried about it. So Chris, luckily, is the perfect site owner and I'm pretty sure he could help me out.
Well, the premise behind this is Rob's solution is obviously collaboration. He's got multiple people trying to do different tasks, and by just moving information around, it's making it difficult for other people. So what they need is a one go-to location where people can see the relevant information for themselves. Now, sometimes you can overburden people by having too much information.
Is that you?
No, I don't think so. It might be yours. We'll snap them both in half and see which one stops first. So basically, sometimes you can overburden people in SharePoint by presenting them with too much information. For the conference, I asked Rob, how many people book onto the conference?
500, 600.
No one wants to see 500 or 600 items or documents in a library or list. So maybe we want to implement something simple, and simple is always the best approach. How about a document library for these documents? How about a view so that Rob only sees the information that's relevant to him and finance only see the relevant information for themselves? Now, sales can directly upload those documents to the library, cutting out one of the processes where people are delivering emails to Rob, and we also get rid of the emails as well. Rather than Rob receiving an email and working on the content from a document and creating copies, he can go to the original document and basically, once he's done his process, he can update it, and the finance team can also jump in and update the documents themselves. So this is actually, for a perfect site owner, sometimes a complicated scenario doesn't really mean that you need a complicated solution.
Sounds ideal. I don't know anything about SharePoint, but I like the sound of it.
Excellent.
Can you show me it?
I don't like people looking over my shoulder, but yeah, I'll welcome it this time. So I'll start off with a document library, and it's quite simply going to be Conference 2013. If you want another one, I can create a template for you.
That's fine.
Okay, you're not going to have another conference?
Maybe.
So Conference 2013. And we might do for the description is mention the departments who are working here. Sales to submit.
Yeah, I'll have to break out of this role for a bit. I will heckle him a bit, but it's worth filling in the descriptions, right? Because pretty much all the descriptions that you fill in SharePoint do go somewhere. The end users see them. So for like column descriptions, when you're creating columns in a library, they get shown on the forms for data entry, so they go somewhere. Things like the library, it kind of appears in the bar across, just underneath the title of the library. So people often wonder about, well, how are we going to explain to people what to do in the libraries, apart from just the name, and the descriptions is there for that. So column descriptions, any descriptions really, it's worth filling them in.
Emails work in descriptions as well, so if you wanted to promote someone's email address, you can do so. One way I like to do this actually is, has anyone ever used email a list or email a library? Excellent. What I sometimes do is I put that email address in the description, so when people look at my library, it says, you can actually email this library, here's the link, and they'll go, so I can be at home, I can email a document to a library, can I? Yes. And there's the email address, so they're happy with that. Navigation. I'm going to put this in the navigation to make it easier for Rob to find. And I'm going to have document version history on just in case you make a change to the document and you want to record that.
Yeah, the documents will change. We work on them, yes.
It's nice to know it. Now, I might get absolutely hyper here and go, let's upload all the documents, but actually a perfect site owner will consider the columns first. If we're uploading mass documents, we might want to consider default values for the columns that we're uploading to. Therefore, I can populate as much metadata as possible with the correct values and then switch the default values on the columns later to reflect what the library is currently being used for. So all of the current conference forms at the moment have been paid for and the tickets have been submitted. Any newer forms that come in will not have any payments received and the tickets wouldn't have been sent out. So to replicate that, I'm going to create a couple of columns. Now, I need to handle security in a few moments, so I'll come back to that. But let's start off with whether it's paid. And that's going to be a yes, no. And the people who are responsible for whether it's paid or not are going to be finance.
Yeah, so one of the things that's kind of sometimes frustrating for people is you can't do security per column. It doesn't kind of work like that by default. So what we can do as like a middle ground is we can put little descriptions in, like a don't fill this in unless you're a finance person. So it's maybe not the whole solution, but for now it's kind of a nice start.
So we also want another column to, for Rob's role, which is whether or not the tickets have been sent.
Yeah, that's the only bit I care about basically, but the emails that the process creates is just bugging me. So I'm willing to kind of consider a process. From my point of view, I don't really care about the finance team and the sales team. I just want to be able to kind of manage my process without getting these 600 emails that at the moment I'm facing. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm coming from still.
Okay. Now, I've got my columns in. One other thing as the perfect site owner that I might consider is that you shouldn't really upload content into SharePoint before you've added the security, because if that information is confidential, there is a window that people can access that content. So what I want to do is break inheritance to stop my library from inheriting its permissions from the parent site. Now, breaking inheritance doesn't sound as difficult as the actual terminology sounds. To break inheritance, you'll notice that at the top right of this screen, in the ribbon, I've got the library permissions section.
He's only just got that laser pointer, so he's all over it.
Oh, it's fun. Okay, so first I need to stop inheriting permissions from the parent. Now what I'm actually going to do is, Rob's informed me that the only people who work on this process is sales and finance. Like I said, best practice, I'll probably keep Daniel in, who's the full control, he's the site owner. What I'll do is I'll get rid of most other people. Luckily I'm the site collection administrator, so I'll keep control. I might keep the owners in as well. So at this point, what I want to do is add the Active Directory security groups, meaning that I don't really have to maintain security for this library. So I'm going to grant permission. And I could add them to SharePoint security groups, but arguably it's going to be fairly simple as it is.
Just as a little tip here, one of the things that's kind of annoying as a site owner is that these groups don't resolve. You know, you can't see who's in them. So normally I just drop into Outlook and compose an email and just put it in the to box of my Outlook email and hit the little plus to expand it, and I can see then who's in that group. Yeah, so I just pretend like I'm. So I thought that was a great tip. I was like, yeah, we do that. We knew that. We do that all the time. So one of the things that makes me nervous is I don't know how up to date those groups are. So I can just check it before I add it in. I just compose a quick email, just check it. Is it the right people in there? Worst case scenario is the group's empty, or it's got people in that have left the company 5 years ago, and I'd have to just manually add each individual user or start to make my own groups. Chris is kind of lucky. He's got best case scenario. The group was up to date. He's in good contact with his IT department and HR, and if someone moves department, they update it straight away. The security's perfect.
Does check permissions work for an individual if they're done by groups like that?
Unfortunately not, no. It's a bit ambiguous. Your check permissions will work if the users are added individually or added to SharePoint groups. Now, I've got a secure library, so what I'm going to do is add the content in now. So I've got a mapped S drive, and Rob's been adding all of his content to that S drive. So what I'm going to do is upload multiple documents. And I'm going to give the computer a few seconds to resolve. Give me
this actually effectively is the pre-site checklist where he's doing a discovery of what forms do we have, what documents do we have. So this is the end result of all that.
So what we've got mapped is an S drive, and the S drive has booking forms from all the companies who've booked onto the conference, including ourselves. We like to go to our own conferences. So what I'm going to do is use the upload multiple files. I could drag and drop, but I'm just going to browse for the files instead. Navigate to the S drive, which is here, and select everything. So this could be your migration technically. Now, fortunately for me, there's not a lot of metadata that I need to transist across, especially if you're navigating from navigating content from a file share. There's usually not a lot of information tagged onto it, so I can just pull it in. Now, because I've got default values on my columns, all of the metadata will update with the default values of paid and tickets sent. I don't want that to be continuous, so I'm going to change the columns so that the default values reset back to no. So I need to go into my library settings, which is under the library tab, under library settings, and you'll notice there's a column section down here.
It's kind of scary in there. Really, a perfect site owner would know what every one of those buttons do. There are buttons in there that I think you need a really good imagination to work out when you would want to press them. Let's make it so no one can ever find this stuff through search. That's a great button. So again, just because it's in there doesn't mean you should press it. Generally, I'd say if there's stuff in there, that's not rude, is it? It's not, is it? So I was just checking. The first one today, wasn't it? So within here, what I'd say is to watch out, because a lot of people kind of be in here and think this is all going pretty well, and maybe I'm getting ambitious as a site owner, and I'll just try a few other things, and they switch stuff on, and then they don't really know what's happened, and it will be like 6 months later, it'll come back and bite you because you will have switched off versioning or something else that really affects something further down the line. So by all means, go back to your test site if you're getting brave as a site owner and getting a bit more adventurous, and test in there.
How's that looking, Rob? Is it looking very populated to you, hopefully?
Yeah, it looks nice.
Right, so Rob probably doesn't want to look at 500 forms. Rob probably wants to look at the only content that's relevant to him, and the only way we can do that is to utilise the views to filter content. Now, we could just apply filters, but Rob would be doing that every day, and that would frustrate him. So I want to create some views to filter the content he needs to look at. But let's deal with finance first. Finance aren't standing next to me at the moment. We can pretend they are. But if I wanted to create a view for them, I'll just quickly create a brand new view, and I'm actually going to use a datasheet view because finance like to update lots of metadata at once. Now, datasheet view has an advantage, but they can just sort of look at the view, tick a tick box, and then once the view updates, that information will then be replicated. So if you tick a tick box, it will drop out of their view and go into a different view. So I might have unpaid bookies or bookers. So these are the people who are booked onto the conference that haven't paid. So what I might want to do is just apply a quick filter to say where paid is equal to no. Now Rob's situation is slightly different. If I go back to my standard view, I've got my unpaid bookers there. I'm also going to create a second view. Rob's situation, he doesn't act upon content that's not paid. So what he wants to do is he wants to see the bookers that have paid, but the tickets that have not been sent out. So I'm going to say unsent tickets. I'm going to just put on another filter that's got an and statement. So what I'll do is I'll say paid is equal to yes, and tickets sent is equal to no. And by creating an and statement, I'm refining the information that Rob will see in this interface. So now, what I'd like Rob to do is test this system, and hopefully he'll agree that that's fairly useful. Now, he's seeing all of the content at once, but I've already shown Rob that if he wants to see content that he's interested in, he can have a look at the unsent tickets view. So what we'll do, Rob, there's a test document which we have just here. It's actually called test, believe it or not. So we'll just paste that onto desktop, and what I want you to do is upload it, and because the metadata has been set up in the columns to default value to no, you should be able to go through the whole process and play the part of finance and himself.
I feel really nervous now. Okay, so you've told me that I can upload. Okay. So there's a button for that, so that's good.
There's a button for that.
Okay, so when it lets me.
Doesn't want you to upload that document. That would be useful.
Okay. So this is good. I recognise this is the same as my network drives and stuff, so I like that. Isn't it worrying when you're doing a demo for the end user and you go, oh, that's like the network drives? No, that's not the good bit.
Yeah, it's,
That's
it's like my computer.
Oh, okay, so that's cool. So you built me a form?
Yeah.
You never said you were going to do that. Could have said it was going to be a form, wouldn't know what you meant.
Okay. So because it's been updated with the correct metadata, what we'll find now is that if Rob switches to the financial role, which is the booking forms which haven't been paid, finance would receive the payment and then place a tick in the paid column.
So I can just tick there. Cool. So that's there.
And then once those changes have applied...
Okay. Could I have ticked loads of those?
Sorry?
Could I have ticked 10 of those?
Yes, you could have.
Cool.
And that would have all updated at once, so again, saving you time. Now, if we didn't have datasheet view, we'd have to edit individual items. So datasheet view can be quite useful for that. And then what Rob could do is to finish the demonstration, he can see information that he is just interested in. So this is hopefully what you wanted to see.
Yep. And I've got no emails at all, basically.
No. Now, he could set up alerts, and he could receive, finance could receive emails of a new item entered into the library. Rob could receive emails when the items are modified, but he was trying to get a system where he cuts down on emails. And secondly, one thing that we like to point out is that these views have their own URLs. So Rob could copy that URL or bookmark it, and then he could navigate to the site, or I could build it into the actual site navigation.
Yeah, I know how I'd describe that actually. Instead of going through all the stupid websites, I'll just go straight to the page with mine on.
That's an end user perspective. So that demonstration was just to really show that where Rob's sort of creating a complicated solution, it's actually very easily facilitated within SharePoint.
I think one of the main things is just the time that it takes, you know, so the core problem of all those emails and the complexity of handing work back and forth, and actually it just turns out it's just one library, possibly in an existing site. So actually when we were planning the first conference, we literally had that conversation internally, and as Chris kind of alluded to earlier on, actually we'd set up a much more complicated process with more people involved, and some of them were in different parts of the world, but it didn't matter. It was just a library with maybe 7 columns, I think we had in our real one, and it just works like that. So kind of for that internal process, there was literally no emails. One of the things we didn't put on there, because we're a bit short of time, is another column for notes. So we would use that column for people to hand over comments between each other. So again, if someone was chasing a payment but couldn't get through, they'd just leave a note in, tried calling on Wednesday, couldn't get hold of anyone. So again, if someone's doing that in Canada and someone's doing that in Leicestershire, it doesn't matter. We just fill in our notes column, just a text column, and it really saves us a lot of hassle.
Okay. So, should we skip the next one, or?
No, let's do it.
Okay. So, did you like it? You can do an internet high five. You can place your hand on there if you like, Rob.
It's cool.
Yeah. It's all right. Great. So, the next thing. So I'll sit at my theoretical perfect site owner desk.
Okay, so completely different scenario, completely. So I have a different problem. I've got a DVD that I've bought, and it's got thousands of photos on it, and they're really high quality, and I'm kind of working in the marketing department. So I've heard that we've got SharePoint and we have to upload everything. So I'm wondering if Chris is going to give me a site and I'm just going to upload all these photos.
Okay. So sometimes you might have an idea in your head and you think, well, maybe a photo library will be fine for Rob here. Sometimes you should actually consider what kind of effort will go into replicating that and whether or not you should actually just go back and say no. Because the amount, 10,000 photos, is a lot to upload. These are high quality images, which means they'll take up a lot of space in our server. And obviously our server is quite expensive real estate, so we don't want to just flood it with massive pictures. The other thing is, Rob's the only one who uses these pictures. It's not really going to be collaboration if he's just using them as a resource, so we might as well just keep them on the DVD. Plus there's the metadata, which could take a long time to fill out as well. He's not a data entry clerk, so he's not going to enjoy putting in all the metadata. So generally, I think because Rob wants to keep those files to himself, but he's just heard that it could go on SharePoint, ends doesn't justify the means, and it's probably more relevant that Rob keeps that content on his DVD and we keep our SharePoint sites free of those images, especially if no one else is going to use them.
Yeah, I think the main thing that drove that was just that no one else cares. So if you've got loads of content but no one else cares about it, it's probably not a good candidate for, yeah, let's make a site for that and bring it in.
I think I only get the high five for that one because Rob's going away thinking, oh, I thought it was a good idea, and I'm thinking, thank God I saved myself all that work. The final demonstration, Rob.
Yeah, so we're running short on time, but we'll have a stab at this one as well. So this one's me, like Rob, real me, not any voices or anything. So this was writing another training course. So Microsoft have just gone and brought out 2013 of everything. So that means we've got to rewrite all of the courses. One of the things that always frustrates me as a trainer is actually there'll be maybe 6 of us will get together and write a course. And we love it. It's like one of the best bits of our jobs. We get paid to just sit and learn about stuff and write about stuff, and no one else really gets paid to do that pretty much. So it's great. So one of the things that frustrates me then is Word. Like Chris will be using his Word template with his styles, and I think I've got kind of a pretty similar version of that template with my styles, and I've got a table of content, and when we're working on it, it all seems okay until we try and bring it together to print it. And then it doesn't all quite look the same. It's kind of frustrating. Also, I travel a lot, so it needs to be available offline, and we need to be able to deal with that. So again, I'm hoping that Chris could help me with that.
Rob's got a relevant use here for SharePoint. Now, what we should do is enforce his consistency with the use of content types. Rob has 2 templates. He's got a Word document that he uses, and he's got a slide presentation. Now, he's also got a justified reason for a site. He's got some content that he's working with, but the use of tasks lists would also benefit him here. So he might want a completely new site. So as Rob's mentioned, and I know that you're quite aware of the time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this demonstration. We'll see how much of it we can get done. So what I'll do is I'll create a new site, and we're just going to start off with a basic team site for Rob's training courses. So we'll say this.
We've not overrun yet, we just suspect that we will.
Good site owners always go into the More Options menu to fill out descriptions, specify permissions in further detail, and maybe or not you want the inheritance of your navigation bar from the top site to appear in the bottom. And I do like consistent navigation. Once the site's up, I might focus directly on the content types first. Hopefully, I mean, no one else has concentrated too much on content types in their session, so let's have a quick review. Good site owners should probably know a little bit about content types, and ways to understand content types is to look at existing locations like a calendar. When you create a new event in a calendar, that is a content type, and what you're doing is you're creating a calendar event, and Microsoft have uniquely coded that event to be relevant to a calendar. But what you can do is you can say, I want to create my own document template and add it to a library in the new event or new document dropdown. So what we're doing is we'll create a library for Rob, and this is going to be SharePoint 20. You're working on 2013 now, are you, Rob? Excellent.
Pretty much done it.
Okay, so we've got a document library, and what I'll do is I'll create him a content type. So what I'll do is I'll go to the site settings, and I need to go into the gallery.
Galleries haven't got much of a look in today. We hoped we'd talk about them more, but as a good site owner, we're all about reusable objects. Yeah, so you've got all these galleries where you can create these objects and use them again and again and again for consistency, and so you can update them in the future. So columns was one, and content types is the other. They're the big ones.
Big warning here, please don't edit existing content types. You can cause some very bad adverse effects in your SharePoint environment. Always base your new content types off existing content types. So I'm going to base mine off the original document content type. I'm going to call this course modules.
And again, at a very basic level, what this is going to end up being is the template that we all use as people writing the documents. So it gives us a central location, not a network drive, but somewhere in SharePoint where we can not only collaborate during the creation of the content, but also where we can get started, a consistent starting point, consistent template. So these templates might well be things you've got already, just not got a good formal location for them to live.
So important thing to point out here is that if you go into the advanced settings, your templates can be picked either from a location on your computer or from a document library. One thing that you can do is if you make your templates available in the document library, end users can update them, and then that will update the content type. Or you could physically upload the document and attach it to the content type as well. And you could always upload another document later, but making them available in a library makes it a little bit easier for end users to update it.
So again, when you say end users, you're not going to let all the end users update a typical template. You're going to let a trusted end user who you've given special permissions to be allowed to update that template. So that's kind of again, it didn't get much of a look in yet today, but the art of delegation is very much a good site owner thing to do. So you're allowing these other people that are members of the site to do their job roles effectively. If you're in charge of templates, great. I don't want to really do that. You can have your template, it will be here and you can modify it and then it will inherit throughout. So although the site owner creates the content type, which is the fiddly bit, which we've already agreed to, we said it's okay, we'll do that. Someone else can be doing the actual sort of styles and those bits.
Also, Rob's interested in specifying the author of the module, because sometimes the person who updates the document and the person who last modified the document isn't the original author. So what I'm going to do is create a column called author of module. I create another site column, and I'll also add a column for you wanted to map how percent complete it was. So you had what we probably wanted a choice column. So if I pick a choice.
Yeah, the part of the business process here that I didn't cover before is the idea that the document will go through 3 stages. So as I'm writing it, it's a draft. I want to store it centrally even though it's a draft. So I want a label that says this is a draft, don't send it to a customer. And then a second stage, it's ready for review. So I might have worked on it for like 6-7 weeks at that point, and someone else in the team needs to review it, kind of technical review. And then finally, it's going to go to a complete state. At that point, if you're browsing around the site as like a salesperson and you find something that says complete on it, you can grab it and send it to a customer. There's no coming back to the author of it. If it says complete, it's good to go.
The content type's ready to add to my library now. So this will be the final part of this demo. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into advanced settings within my library and allow management of content types. What I do from this point, once applied, is go to the content type section, and I'm going to add the content types that I've created.
This, I'm afraid, is all still the same in 2013. If you still go advanced, they still have to allow the management of content type in every library. So those of you that have been kind of frustrated in the old versions, it's still the same. Kind of a comfort for those of you that haven't migrated yet to 2013 and thought you were missing out. It's pretty similar. A lot of the frustrations are still there the same.
So if I create a new document now, I've got the original template, which I could technically remove, but Rob's got his consistent course modules document there.
Great.
If we open that, we should be able to see the document that Rob will be using, and then anyone who creates a new module has that consistent template each time they create a new module for the course.
We've not got time to do the next bit, but effectively you can do the exact same thing for PowerPoint. So our PowerPoint presentation would work in the same way. I think this is kind of cool. We were talking about this in the office between 5 or 6 of us. We're all talking about SharePoint all the time. One of the main things we kind of came to again as a big realization was if people are creating content in SharePoint, we really want them to use the content types. Yeah, so they're going to get their document information panel, which is great. So their business processes are going to be there, the story of the document they can fill in. And also they've got the template. So yeah, a lot of people say, yeah, you can upload your existing stuff, but really we should be pushing as much as possible. If there's new content and the formatting of it is important, which it probably is, if it's going external, do it through new and use the content type. And again, as site owners, that puts a bit of work back on us, but we've already accepted that role, so.
Okay.
Where did that go? Did it say?
Well, I thought I'd switch back.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
just to finish up.
So imagine loads of documents in there. We could see who the authors were. We could see what state they were at. It's kind of the same sort of scenario, really, but just for a whole different purpose. It wasn't really that document was going to be moving between departments. It was going to stay in the one department. But again, it means that for that whole process of writing a training course where there's going to be maybe 10 Word documents, 10 PowerPoint presentations, we never send a single email. It's all in that SharePoint environment. That SharePoint environment happens to be available online as well. Yep, so from out and about, it just works the same, basically. Okay, so we're into the last few minutes now. We've only got a couple of slides left, I promise.
Okay, so just to recap, so ongoing maintenance, we can update content types from the gallery. Changes for the content type get replicated to the locations where the content type's being using. So that's a bonus to us. We configured something that was slightly complicated, but it allows us going forward to make simple changes that replicate to multiple locations. Security is maintained by IT for my scenarios, so I don't actually have to configure security any further. IT will do that on behalf of me. I could use reporting to find out how my site's used. Web analytics is a feature that pretty much dictates usage over time. So you need to use your environment. You have to have people using it to see those results. It also is a feature that needs setting up. There's another way around that. You can use the view all site content option within your sites, which allows you to take a sneak peek of usage. So if I went to view all site content, it gives me an idea of how long ago content was created, how much content is in my lists and libraries. And if someone asks you to create a library for them and it's got no content in it and it's 3 months old and no use, you might have a warranted excuse to delete that library. So view all site content is quite important. You can also use templates for your sites, lists and libraries to replicate content that you spent time on, and you can even include the content within the sites up to 10 megabytes. I know it's 50 megabytes within a site and 10 megabytes for a list and library if you want to include this content within the site or the lists and libraries. So by using templates, you can save yourselves time in the long run as well. Rob, did you just want to finish up with what's new in 2013?
Yeah, we can do. So recently, although most of our customers haven't moved to 2013 yet, in case you're wondering, we've been busy on 2013 in the cloud and on dry land, I've started to call it that, but no one else calls it that, on dry land or in the cloud. But we've got loads of spare time to chat, I'm sure. So within here, here's a few things that we think will affect site owners. So some of the terminology, just core terminology, has changed in 2013. So things generally are not just referred to as libraries and lists now, they're apps. So there's this bigger phrase of apps. So apps seems to mean libraries and lists, but also these other things that you can download off the internet that could do almost anything. So that's pretty general now. So we can see where that's coming from other markets that have got these phrases, apps, like our phones and so on. So there's a change of terminology, but the good news is generally you still get all your same lists and libraries pretty much. There might be a few exceptions, but pretty much you still have your calendars and task lists and document libraries. So what you know about those will still apply. Chris, the next one was security, which...
Oh yeah, security. This is a big one actually. In SharePoint 2013, your members have the edit level of access. Edit level access means that the people who you make members of your sites have the ability to add, edit and delete apps, which might actually sound quite horrifying. If your members of your site can start throwing in apps, just imagine what they can do. Just create more lists, more libraries, delete your lists and libraries. So you might want to consider going back to the way that 2010 managed things and gave members of a site contribute level access, which is just add, edit and delete content. You can change that, but be aware by default it's edit, okay?
I have a horrible feeling that we might be a bit old-fashioned, though. You know, when you're just used to something the way it is and the new thing scares you a bit.
No, it's all stay the same.
So maybe we're old-fashioned.
It's scary. It's scary.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so they could make a library, they could make a calendar.
My mouth hung open for about 5 minutes when I saw that. I was like, what is going on here?
Okay, so I think the last one was mine, wasn't it? So social. Yeah, 2013 is really social. There's a couple of specific elements, but it does seem to be a bit of a theme. So community sites. At the moment, you probably know them as forums. Yeah, so you've got your forums where you can post questions and answers. You can put pictures in. That's all great in 2010 and 2007. So they decided we're going to have a community site. And it's just a bit more like a community site on the internet now. So you get points for asking questions and answering questions. So you have like a scoreboard.
Get badges.
Some people love that. You can have a scoreboard and you could be the best person on the forum by answering lots of questions. So that's kind of neat. Some people love it, some people hate that. And also you can give badges. So badges seems to be like a random thing where you can say, well, we just don't care about points. Let's call him a ninja. So you can actually make these badges up and you could declare someone a ninja or whatever phrase you want pretty much, which could be quite good fun. Which seems to overrule all the scoring thing. You're the best if you're a ninja or whatever you call that. Ninja seems to be the one.
I like ninja.
So you have these reputation points. So again, it just brings it more in line with what we had on the internet already.
Okay, do you want me to run through the summary?
Yeah, go for it. Last slide.
Full power. Okay, so just to recap, try and learn as much as possible about SharePoint. You're already on the right track. Keep it simple. Like I said, Rob's first scenario doesn't have to be complicated just because his scenario dictates it. Try and keep things simple. Identify problems in the business to solve. SharePoint is most practically applied when there are problems in a business, and then it can be used to resolve them. If there are no problems, you implement SharePoint, you're not really using it to resolve any issues within the business, it's just kind of there really. Customize your site to make it more relevant. Just because you use a site template doesn't mean all of it is relevant. Strip out what's unnecessary, add what is. Encourage adoption of the site. This just goes back to Rob's cheerleader point, not to actually be a cheerleader, but try and encourage people to actually get invested in SharePoint as a platform. Use a test site to demo and review functionality. It's never too late to learn about the system, so just because you've already sort of implemented your SharePoint environment doesn't mean you can't learn more, it doesn't mean you can't continue to go forward with it. So just because you created your infrastructure doesn't mean you can enhance it. And finally, style over substance. Our demonstrations didn't look fantastic by the end, but they were functional and they served their purpose.
So it was kind of the reverse of style over substance. One of the things that we didn't do much of in this session was that encouraging adoption. So again, there is a session that I'm doing tomorrow, which is about this global company and really all about the marketing and the adoption that they've been driving. Yeah, so that should be an interesting one, just all on that specific topic. Okay. So thanks for joining us today. It's got warmer and warmer in here, right? It's not just me? It's not just me. Okay, so it's kind of nice. So yeah, thanks for joining us. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to stick around. If not, thanks again.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.